The morning sun filtered through the tall glass windows of Elysium, casting elegant shadows across the marble floors. The luxury boutique on Fifth Avenue had just opened its doors for the day, and Vivian Porter straightened her designer blazer as she surveyed her domain. After 15 years of climbing the fashion industry ladder, she had finally secured the position of manager at one of New York's most exclusive shopping destinations, and she was determined to prove herself worthy of the title. "Remember," she told her staff during their morning huddle, "our clientele expects perfection. Every interaction must reflect the Elysium standard." She glanced at her watch, a gift from the boutique's owner upon her promotion 3 weeks ago. "Let's make today count." The boutique specialized in rare designer pieces that most people would only see in magazines or on red carpets. Handbags with 5-figure price tags rested on illuminated pedestals like museum artifacts. Clothes hung with precise spacing, each item treated as a work of art rather than something as mundane as apparel. By midday, Vivian had already overseen the sale of a limited edition watch to a tech billionaire and personally assisted a famous actress in selecting an evening gown for an upcoming charity event. The pressure to maintain the store's reputation for catering to the elite was immense, especially given the owner's frequent reminders about increasing quarterly sales targets. "The Simpson account called," her assistant Trey whispered, handing her a note. "They've requested a private showing this evening." Vivian nodded, mentally calculating how this might push them over their weekly goal. Every major sale brought her one step closer to security in her position. The fashion industry was notoriously fickle, and at 42 she'd witnessed too many careers cut short by a single misstep. Around 2 o'clock the skies darkened, and rain began to pelt the windows. The store grew quiet as the weather deterred casual browsers. Not that Elysium encouraged browsing without buying. Vivian used the lull to review inventory with Trey when the bell above the door chimed. A woman entered, shaking raindrops from a simple black umbrella. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail and she wore dark jeans, white sneakers, and an understated navy blazer over a plain white t-shirt. No designer logos were visible. No statement jewelry caught the light. Her face was partially obscured by large sunglasses, which she didn't remove despite being indoors. Vivian assessed the newcomer with a practiced eye and felt a twinge of disappointment. This was clearly not their usual clientele. While the woman carried herself with confidence and was well-groomed, her outfit suggested a middle-class professional on her lunch break, not someone who could afford Elysium's offerings. "Good afternoon," Vivian said, her tone polite but cooler than the enthusiastic welcome she'd given the actress earlier. "Is there something specific you're looking for today?" The woman smiled warmly. "Just browsing for now, thank you." Her voice was pleasant, with a hint of a Midwestern accent. "Of course," Vivian replied, gesturing vaguely toward the store. "Feel free to look around." She turned back to Trey, lowering her voice. "Let's continue with the inventory. I'll need those numbers by 4. From the corner of her eye, Vivian watched as the woman moved toward a display of handbags. When she picked up a small clutch to examine it, Vivian tensed. That particular piece was crocodile skin, hand-stitched in Milan, and cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. "That's from our exclusive collection," Vivian called out, moving swiftly to intervene. "It's quite special. Limited edition." "It's beautiful craftsmanship," the woman replied, turning the bag over gently in her hands. "The attention to detail is remarkable." Something about the way she handled the piece, with understanding and appreciation rather than wide-eyed awe, caught Vivian off guard. Still, she couldn't shake her initial impression. "It's also $22,000, Vivian added with a tight smile. "One of our more accessible pieces, actually." The woman returned the smile without a hint of embarrassment. "The pricing doesn't surprise me. Quality like this commands its value." Vivian blinked, momentarily thrown by the response. Most non-serious customers would have quickly replaced the item or made an awkward joke about needing to win the lottery. This woman seemed unfazed. 2 other customers entered the store, a well-known socialite and her daughter, both regular clients. Vivian immediately brightened. Please excuse me, she told the casual browser. My associate Trey can assist you if you have any questions. She gestured toward Trey, who was arranging a display of silk scarves before gliding away to greet the newcomers with enthusiastic familiarity. Mrs. Whitfield, what a pleasure to see you today. We just received those earrings you inquired about last month. For the next 20 minutes, Vivian devoted her attention to the Whitfields, pulling item after item for their consideration. She was vaguely aware of the other woman continuing to move through the store, occasionally examining pieces with that same quiet appreciation. When the Whitfields decided on several purchases, Vivian personally escorted them to the register, where they charged over $30,000 without blinking. After they departed with their signature blue Elysium bags, Vivian's mood was considerably lifted. She turned her attention back to the remaining customer, who was now looking at a display of evening wear. Finding everything all right? Vivian asked, her tone still professional but noticeably less warm than with the previous customers. Yes, thank you, the woman replied. Actually, I was wondering if I could see the new Valentina Chen collection. I understand you're one of the few boutiques carrying her latest pieces. Vivian's eyebrows rose slightly. Valentina Chen was indeed their newest and most exclusive designer, having just signed a limited distribution deal with Elysium and 2 other high-end retailers worldwide. The collection hadn't even been formally announced yet. I'm sorry, but that collection is only available for preview by appointment, and only to our established clients, Vivian explained, her suspicion growing. How did this woman even know about the collection? Perhaps I could interest you in some of our more accessible lines. Something shifted in the woman's expression, a subtle tightening around the eyes visible even behind her sunglasses. I understand exclusivity, she said evenly, but I'm quite interested in Chen's work, particularly after her showcase in Milan last season. I'd appreciate even a brief look at the pieces. Vivian felt her professional mask slipping. This person clearly didn't belong here, yet was trying to access their most exclusive merchandise. Was she a journalist trying to get an early scoop? Or worse, someone working for a knockoff manufacturer? As I mentioned, those pieces are strictly by appointment, Vivian repeated, her voice hardening. And frankly, they're significantly beyond the price point you might be expecting. The starting piece in that collection is priced at $35,000. The woman removed her sunglasses, and for the first time, Vivian could see her full face. There was something strikingly familiar about her features, but in the heat of the moment, Vivian couldn't place it. I'm well aware of Valentina's pricing structure, the woman said calmly. I've followed her career since she was designing under Marceau in Paris. Price isn't a concern for me today. Vivian felt a flush of irritation. This had gone on long enough. Look, I don't mean to be rude, but Elysium caters to a very specific clientele. We pride ourselves on providing an exclusive experience for customers who regularly invest in luxury goods. There are several lovely department stores just a few blocks away that might better suit your needs and budget. A stunned silence fell over the boutique. Trey, who had been helping another customer nearby, froze in place, his eyes widening in apparent horror. The woman's expression remained composed, though a flicker of something, disappointment perhaps, crossed her features. I see, she said quietly. Thank you for your time. She replaced her sunglasses, gathered her umbrella, and walked toward the door with remarkable dignity. No tantrum, no demands to speak to someone higher up, just a graceful exit that somehow made Vivian feel worse than any angry outburst might have. As the door closed behind her, Trey rushed over, his face pale. Vivian, he whispered urgently, do you know who that was? Some wannabe influencer trying to get photos of the Chen collection before release, probably, Vivian replied dismissively, though a knot of unease was forming in her stomach. Trey shook his head slowly, pulling out his phone and quickly bringing up a photo. That was Michelle Obama, former First Lady Michelle Obama. Vivian stared at the image on the screen, then at the door where the woman had just exited. The bottom seemed to drop out of her world as recognition finally dawned, far too late. Oh, my God, she breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. What have I done? Vivian stood frozen in place, the revelation hitting her like a physical blow. The woman she had just dismissed, practically shooed away like an unwanted solicitor, was Michelle Obama, the former First Lady of the United States, one of the most admired women in America. "Are you absolutely certain?" she asked Trey, her voice barely above a whisper. "Positive." Trey nodded, scrolling through more photos on his phone. "She sometimes goes shopping incognito. There have been a few articles about it, how she likes to experience normal life without the security detail. Sometimes." The elegant glass door of Elysium suddenly felt like the entrance to a courtroom where Vivian had just been sentenced. She could already imagine the headlines: "Elitist Boutique Snubs Michelle Obama." Her career, which she had spent nearly 2 decades building, could be over by dinner time. "I need to fix this," she murmured, moving toward the door. "I need to apologize." Trey caught her arm. "She's already gone, Vivian, and honestly, running after her on the street might make things worse." He was right, of course. Chasing down the former First Lady on Fifth Avenue would only create a scene and draw more attention to her monumental mistake. Vivian returned to the center of the store, her designer heels suddenly feeling like concrete blocks. "Did anyone else recognize her?" she asked, scanning the boutique. There were currently 3 other customers browsing, all seemingly absorbed in their own shopping experiences. But then she noticed a young woman near the scarf display, hastily putting away her phone with a guilty expression. Their eyes met briefly before the customer looked away, pretending to be fascinated by a silk scarf. Vivian's stomach dropped further. Had she been filming? The possibility sent a wave of nausea through her body. "Act normal," she instructed Trey under her breath. "We handle this professionally. If anyone asks, we say Mrs. Obama was browsing privately, and we respected her wish for anonymity." It was a weak cover story, but it was all she could come up with in the moment. Vivian forced herself to walk calmly to her office in the back of the store, closed the door, and collapsed into her chair. With trembling fingers, she pulled up social media on her computer. Nothing yet. But these things could take time to circulate. Maybe she would be lucky. Maybe the young woman was just texting a friend or taking selfies with the merchandise. Maybe Michelle Obama would be too gracious to mention the incident to anyone. The rest of the afternoon passed in a fog of anxiety. Vivian went through the motions of managing the store, assisting customers, and reviewing the day's sales. But her mind kept replaying those final moments with Michelle Obama. The calm dignity with which she had left. The realization that had come too late. At 6:30 p.m., after the last customer had departed and the staff was preparing to close, Vivian's phone buzzed with a news alert. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw the headline, "Former First Lady allegedly mistreated at exclusive NYC boutique." The article was brief, but devastating. An anonymous source claimed that Michelle Obama had been rudely dismissed from Elysium earlier that day. There was no video, yet, but the source had provided enough details about the interaction to make it clear they had witnessed the entire exchange. "This can't be happening," Vivian whispered, scrolling frantically through the comments already accumulating beneath the article. People were outraged, calling for boycotts of the store. Her phone rang. It was Richard Elysium himself, the owner. "Tell me this isn't true," he said without preamble when she answered. "Richard, I can explain," Vivian began, her mouth dry. "I didn't recognize her. She was dressed so casually, wearing sunglasses." "You didn't recognize Michelle Obama?" His voice rose in disbelief. "One of the most photographed women in the world?" "She was incognito," Vivian insisted weakly. "And you know how we're supposed to be vigilant about the Chen collection. So you're saying you denied the former First Lady access to merchandise because you thought she couldn't afford it?" The ice in his tone could have frozen the Hudson River. "No, I mean, not exactly." But even as she tried to defend herself, Vivian knew how it sounded. How it was. "This is a PR nightmare," Richard continued. "My phone has been ringing nonstop for the past 30 minutes. The Chen team is in a panic, worried their brand will be associated with discrimination." Discrimination? Vivian felt sick. "Richard, that's not what happened. I would never. It doesn't matter what you intended. He cut her off. It matters how this looks. And right now it looks like Elysium treated one of the most beloved public figures in America, like she didn't belong in our store. The implications are horrific. Vivian closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. What do you want me to do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing, Richard replied firmly. Don't speak to any press. Don't post anything online. Don't try to contact Mrs. Obama. Our PR team is drafting a statement and we'll handle this professionally. The "we" in his sentence notably excluded her, Vivian realized. Am I fired? She forced herself to ask. There was a long pause. We'll discuss your position tomorrow. For now, lock up and go home, and Vivian, prepare yourself, this is going viral. By the time she left the store, Richard's prediction was already coming true. The story had been picked up by several major news outlets and a hashtag was trending. Share Elysium snub. Worse, someone had identified Vivian by name in one of the comment threads, and her social media accounts were being flooded with angry messages. On the taxi ride home, Vivian's phone buzzed continuously with notifications. Friends texting to ask if she was okay. Fashion industry acquaintances distancing themselves with subtle messages of disappointment. And worst of all, a voicemail from her mother in Pittsburgh. Honey, please call me. I just saw something awful on the news. The 20-minute ride felt like crossing an ocean. When she finally reached her apartment, Vivian could barely get her key in the lock, her hands were shaking so badly. Inside, she kicked off her expensive heels and sank onto her couch in the darkness. The irony wasn't lost on her. Just this morning she had been on top of the world, proud of her position and the status it represented. Now she was hiding in her own home, afraid to turn on the lights lest someone recognize her through the windows. Her phone rang again. It was Trey. Have you seen it? He asked without greeting. Seen what? Vivian replied wearily. The news articles? The social media firestorm? Yes, I've seen it all. No, Trey said, his voice oddly strained. The video. It just dropped on TikTok about 10 minutes ago. It's already at 300,000 views. Vivian's blood ran cold. What video? That girl with the phone. She was filming the whole thing. From the moment Mrs. Obama walked in, it's not good, Vivian. With a sense of impending doom, Vivian opened the app and found the video easily. It was on the trending page. The footage was crystal clear, capturing her dismissive tone, her pointed comments about pricing, and worst of all, her final suggestion, that Michelle Obama might be more comfortable shopping elsewhere. The comments were brutal. The look on her face when she realizes who she just kicked out. This is what happens when you judge people by their clothes, elitism and prejudice. In luxury retail caught in 4K, Michelle handled this with such class. The last comment stung the most because it was true. Throughout the entire interaction, Michelle Obama had maintained her composure and dignity. She hadn't name-dropped or pulled rank. She had simply allowed Vivian to make her own terrible mistake. Vivian closed the app and threw her phone across the couch. Then she buried her face in her hands and did something she hadn't done since her father's funeral 5 years ago. She sobbed. Great, heaving cries that came from somewhere deep inside, where she kept all her fears about not being good enough, about not belonging in the rarefied world she had clawed her way into. Because the truth, the ugly truth she had never admitted to anyone, was that Vivian had treated Michelle Obama exactly the way she had always feared being treated herself. She had been the gatekeeper, the one who decided who belonged and who didn't, based on nothing more substantial than first impressions and appearances. And now the world was watching her humiliation unfold in real time, with no way to rewind or erase what she had done. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Emergency meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. PR team and legal will be present. Vivian didn't need a translator to understand what that meant. By this time tomorrow, she would no longer be the manager of Elysium. The question was whether she would have any career left in fashion at all. She switched off her phone, crawled into bed fully dressed, and pulled the covers over her head, as if she could hide from the consequences that were surely coming. But even in the darkness, one thought kept circling. What would Michelle Obama do now? Vivian woke to the harsh buzz of her alarm at 6:30 a.m. For one blessed moment, she existed in the peaceful limbo between sleep and full consciousness. Then, the memories of yesterday came flooding back. Her stomach twisted into a knot as she reached for her phone, which she had turned back on before falling into a fitful sleep. The notification count was in the hundreds. Missed calls, text messages, emails, and social media alerts had piled up overnight. The video had gone fully viral, amassing millions of views across multiple platforms. Morning news shows were discussing the incident. Her name was trending. She forced herself to get out of bed and prepare for the meeting with Richard and the PR team. What would she wear to her own professional execution? After staring blankly at her closet for several minutes, she settled on a simple black dress. Funeral appropriate, she thought grimly. Outside her apartment building, Vivian pulled her sunglasses on and ducked into a waiting taxi. She gave the driver an address 2 blocks from Elysium. She couldn't risk being photographed entering the store. "Rough morning?" the driver asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "You could say that," Vivian replied, keeping her head down. "You know what my grandmother used to say? Today's newspaper wraps tomorrow's fish. Whatever's bothering you, it'll pass." Vivian smiled weakly at the well-intentioned advice. If only he knew that her mistake wasn't just wrapping fish, it was feeding a social media shark frenzy. She asked the driver to drop her off early and walked the remaining distance, taking deep breaths of the cool morning air. At 7:55 a.m., she slipped through Elysium's employee entrance, relieved to find the back hallway empty. In the store's conference room, Richard was already seated at the head of the table, along with a woman Vivian recognized as Diane from the PR firm and a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who had to be the lawyer. Their conversation stopped abruptly when she entered. "Vivian," Richard said, his tone carefully neutral. "Thank you for coming in early." She took a seat across from them, folding her hands to hide their trembling. "Of course. I'll get right to the point," Richard continued. "The situation has escalated beyond our worst projections. The video has been viewed over 12 million times. Major news outlets have picked up the story. We've received calls from civil rights organizations, women's groups, and fashion industry associations." Vivian swallowed hard. "I understand, and I want to say again how deeply sorry I am. I made a terrible mistake. Your personal regret isn't the issue," Diane interjected, her voice clipped and professional. "This has become a brand crisis for Elysium. We're being portrayed as elitist, out of touch, and, most damaging of all, potentially discriminatory." "But that's not what happened," Vivian protested. "I didn't recognize her. I would have treated any casually dressed person the same way." Even as the words left her mouth, she realized how awful they sounded. The lawyer cleared his throat. "That defense isn't helping your case, Ms. Porter. Suggesting that you routinely judge customers based on their appearance rather than specifically discriminating against Mrs. Obama isn't the improvement you seem to think it is." Vivian felt heat rising to her face. "That's not what I meant." "What you meant doesn't matter," Richard cut in, his patience visibly thinning. "What matters is what the public believes. And right now, the public believes that Elysium is a store where even one of the most respected women in America isn't welcome if she doesn't look the part." "The board has made a decision," Diane said, sliding a folder across the table. "We need to take immediate action to mitigate the damage to the brand." Vivian stared at the folder but didn't open it. She already knew what it contained, her termination papers. "We're issuing a public statement this morning," Diane continued. "Elysium will apologize unreservedly to Mrs. Obama and announce several concrete steps we're taking to address this incident, including a comprehensive review of our customer service policies and mandatory sensitivity training for all staff." "And my role in this plan?" Vivian asked, though she already knew the answer. Richard at least had the decency to look her in the eye. "We're announcing your departure, effective immediately. The statement will say that Elysium does not tolerate behavior that makes any customer feel unwelcome, regardless of who they are." Vivian nodded slowly, a strange calm settling over her. This was exactly what she had expected. I understand. There's a severance package, the lawyer added, tapping the folder. Quite generous, actually, given the circumstances. But it comes with conditions including a non-disclosure agreement and a public statement from you accepting full responsibility. You want me to fall on my sword, Vivian said flatly. We want you to acknowledge your mistake and allow Elysium to move forward, Richard corrected. The alternative is much messier for everyone involved. The threat was clear. Accept the severance and the blame, or face a public firing with no financial cushion and possibly legal action. Vivian opened the folder and skimmed the documents. Inside, 6 months' salary in exchange for her silence and her dignity. May I have some time to review this with my own lawyer? She asked. The statement goes out at noon, Richard replied. We need your answer by 11 a.m. 3 hours to decide the fate of her career. Vivian gathered the folder and stood up. I'll be in touch before then. She left the conference room with her head high, but once inside the small employee bathroom, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Everything she had worked for was slipping away because of one terrible judgment call. One moment of thoughtless elitism. Her phone buzzed with a text from Trey. Are you okay? Media vans outside the store, they're saying you're getting fired. News traveled fast in the fashion world. Vivian texted back a brief, I'll call you later, and splashed cold water on her face. She couldn't hide in the bathroom forever. When she emerged, the store was still closed to the public, but several employees had arrived for their shifts. They fell silent as she walked past, their expressions a mixture of pity and discomfort. No one met her eyes. Vivian collected her personal items from her office, a small plant, a framed photo of her family, a few books on fashion history. It all fit into one cardboard box, 15 years in the industry reduced to this. She was about to leave through the back entrance when her phone rang. An unknown number. Probably another reporter trying to get a comment. She almost declined the call, then changed her mind at the last second. Hello? Ms. Porter? This is Lydia Washington, Mrs. Obama's personal assistant. Vivian nearly dropped the phone. Yes, this is Vivian Porter, she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Obama would like to speak with you regarding yesterday's incident at Elysium. Would you be available to meet with her this afternoon? The request was so unexpected that Vivian couldn't process it for a moment. Meet with her? With Michelle Obama? Yes. Mrs. Obama prefers to handle situations like this personally when possible. She'll be at the Harrington Hotel at 2 p.m. and could spare 30 minutes to speak with you privately. Vivian's mind raced. Was this some kind of trap? A public humiliation? But what did she have to lose at this point? I'll be there, she said finally. Excellent. Please come to the service entrance on 48th Street. Someone will meet you there. After ending the call, Vivian stood frozen in place, trying to understand what had just happened. Michelle Obama wanted to meet with her. The woman she had insulted and dismissed now wanted a private conversation. She glanced at her watch. 9:30 a.m. She had 90 minutes to decide about the severance package and then a few hours to prepare for what would surely be one of the most difficult conversations of her life. Vivian left Elysium through the back door, avoiding the media vans Trey had mentioned. In a nearby coffee shop, she found a quiet corner table and called the only lawyer she knew, her cousin Philip, who practiced corporate law in Boston. They're railroading you, he said after she explained the situation. That NDA is excessive, and making you take all the blame publicly protects them at your expense. But do I have a choice? Vivian asked. I did make the mistake. There's a difference between owning your actions and being the company's scapegoat, Philip replied. Let me make a few calls. I know someone in New York who specializes in employment law. While she waited, Vivian scrolled through her emails, deleting interview requests from journalists and messages from former colleagues suddenly eager to distance themselves. But one email caught her eye. From a fashion blog she occasionally read. The subject line, Michelle Obama's History of Fashion Diplomacy. Curious, she opened it. The article wasn't about the Elysium incident directly. but about Michelle Obama's long-standing practice of using fashion as a tool for connection and communication. It detailed how the former First Lady had often chosen to wear pieces by designers from countries she was visiting, highlighting local talent and building cultural bridges. Mrs. Obama's fashion choices have never been random, the article concluded. They're thoughtful statements about inclusion, recognition, and the power of appearance to either divide or unite. Vivian set down her phone, a new understanding dawning. Perhaps Michelle Obama, of all people, might actually understand the complex relationship between appearance and judgment in the fashion world. Not to excuse what Vivian had done, nothing could excuse that, but to see it in a broader context. At 10:55 a.m., 5 minutes before Richard's deadline, Vivian called him. "I've reviewed the agreement with my lawyer," she said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "I can't sign it as written. I'm willing to issue a personal apology taking full responsibility for my actions, but I won't agree to the NDA or the statement that implies discriminatory intent." There was a long silence on the other end. "That's your final decision?" Richard finally asked. "Yes. And Richard? I have a meeting with Michelle Obama this afternoon." Another pause, longer this time. "What? How did that happen?" "Her office called. Me. I don't know what she wants to discuss, but I thought you should know." "This changes things," Richard said slowly. "Let's hold off on any announcements until after your meeting. Call me immediately afterward." Vivian ended the call and looked out the coffee shop window at the busy New York street. For the first time since the video had appeared online, she felt a tiny spark of hope. Not that her career could be saved, that still seemed impossible, but that perhaps she might find a way to make this right, to learn from it, to become better because of it. And that, she realized, was something much more valuable than any job title or designer label could ever be. The Harrington Hotel stood like an elegant dowager among the gleaming skyscrapers of Midtown Manhattan, its red brick facade and green awning spoke of old money and discretion, a place where the truly powerful could meet without the flash and spectacle of newer luxury establishments. Vivian arrived 20 minutes early, too nervous to sit in a coffee shop any longer. She circled the block twice, rehearsing what she might say when face to face with the woman she had so thoughtlessly dismissed. Every opening line she imagined sounded inadequate, every apology too small for the magnitude of her mistake. At 1:55 p.m., she approached the service entrance on 48th Street as instructed. A young woman in a neat gray suit was waiting just inside the door. "Ms. Porter?" she asked, extending her hand. "I'm Lydia Washington, Mrs. Obama's assistant. Thank you for coming." Vivian shook her hand, noticing how firm and confident the grip was. "Thank you for arranging this. I'm not sure what to say, honestly." Lydia gave her a small, professional smile. "Mrs. Obama appreciates your willingness to meet on short notice. If you'll follow me, she's waiting in a private sitting room." They walked through the back corridors of the hotel, passing staff members who nodded respectfully at Lydia. No one seemed to recognize Vivian, which was a small mercy. After yesterday, she had half expected to be stopped and confronted wherever she went. "Just through here," Lydia said, stopping at a polished wooden door. She knocked twice, then opened it without waiting for a response. The room beyond was a comfortable sitting area, decorated in shades of blue and cream. Tall windows overlooked a small courtyard garden, filling the space with natural light. And there, rising from an armchair by the window, was Michelle Obama. In person, without the disguise of casual clothes and sunglasses, she was immediately recognizable. Tall and poised, dressed in a simple but elegant navy pantsuit, she had a presence that seemed to fill the room without dominating it. "Ms. Porter," she said, her voice warm but neutral. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Vivian moved woodenly to the armchair opposite Michelle, perching on its edge like she might need to flee at any moment. "Mrs. Obama, I can't begin to express how sorry I am about yesterday. My behavior was inexcusable, and Michelle held up a hand, stopping Vivian mid-apology. "Before we get to that, I'd like us to just talk for a moment. Would you like some tea? They make an excellent Earl Grey here." The offer of tea, so normal, so civilized, caught Vivian off guard. Yes, thank you. That would be nice. Michelle nodded to Lydia, who slipped out to arrange it. Then she settled back in her chair, studying Vivian with thoughtful eyes. You've had quite a day, I imagine, she said. Vivian let out a sound that was half laugh, half sigh. That's putting it mildly. I'm not sure day is the right word. Apocalypse might be more accurate. A hint of a smile touched Michelle's lips. Social media can certainly make it feel that way. I've been on the receiving end of that myself, though in different circumstances. I deserved it, Vivian said quietly. What I did was wrong. Yes, it was, Michelle agreed, surprising Vivian with her directness. But I didn't ask you here to pile on more guilt. I suspect you've been doing plenty of that yourself. Lydia returned with a tea tray, setting it on the low table between them. Michelle thanked her, then began pouring for both of them. One lump or two? She asked, as if they were just two acquaintances having a social visit. One, please, Vivian replied automatically, still trying to reconcile this surreal situation with the disaster of the past 24 hours. Michelle handed her a delicate china cup, then prepared her own tea. I've been thinking about what happened yesterday, she said after taking a sip. And I have a question for you, if you don't mind. Vivian nodded, bracing herself. When you looked at me in the store, before you knew who I was, what did you see? The question was so unexpected that Vivian almost spilled her tea. I'm not sure what you mean. It's a simple question. Michelle pressed gently. When I walked into Elysium in jeans and a blazer, what did you see? Vivian wanted to find a diplomatic answer, but something in Michelle's steady gaze told her that only complete honesty would do. I saw someone who didn't belong, she admitted, the words painful to say out loud. Someone who wasn't part of the world I was paid to protect. Michelle nodded, seemingly unsurprised by the answer. And what made you so certain of that? Your clothes, Vivian said, then shook her head. No, that's not entirely true. It was more than that. It was the way you didn't seem impressed or intimidated by the store. You didn't have that look that people get when they're somewhere they think is above their station, that mix of awe and insecurity. You were comfortable, but not in the way our usual clients are comfortable, with their entitlement and expectations. So my comfort made you uncomfortable, Michelle observed. The insight was so accurate that Vivian fell silent for a moment. Yes, she finally said. I suppose it did. Michelle set down her teacup. Do you know why I wanted to see the Valentina Chen collection? Vivian shook her head. I was looking for something to wear to a girls' education fundraiser next month. Valentina is Vietnamese American, and she donates a percentage of her profits to scholarships for young women in Southeast Asia. Wearing one of her designs would have been a way to highlight that cause. Shame washed over Vivian anew. I didn't know. Of course you didn't, Michelle said. You couldn't have known because you didn't ask. You made assumptions based on what you saw on the surface. I'm truly sorry, Vivian said, feeling the inadequacy of the words even as she spoke them. To her surprise, Michelle smiled. I believe you are, and that's why I wanted to meet with you in person. I've spent most of my public life being judged by appearances. My clothes, my hair, my body. Too casual, too formal, too expensive. Not expensive enough. Arms too bare, skirt too short, colors too bold. Vivian nodded. She remembered the endless media commentary on Michelle's fashion choices during her years as First Lady. What happened yesterday was hurtful, Michelle continued. But it was also familiar. It happens to women like me, black women, women who don't fit certain expectations, every day, in stores and restaurants and offices across the country. Usually, there's no viral video, no public apology, no consequences for the person who made those judgments. A knock at the door interrupted them. Lydia poked her head in. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mrs. Obama, but they're ready for you whenever you are. Michelle nodded. Thank you, Lydia. Give us 5 more minutes. When they were alone again, Michelle leaned forward, her expression serious. I didn't invite you here just to accept your apology, though I do accept it. I invited you because I think what happened yesterday is an opportunity. An opportunity, Vivian echoed, confused. Yes. An opportunity to turn a moment of prejudice into a conversation about change. Michelle reached for her purse and pulled out a slim folder. I'm scheduled to appear on the morning hour show in 30 minutes. They want me to talk about the incident at Elysium. Vivian's heart sank. So this was it. Michelle Obama was about to publicly denounce her on national television. The final nail in the coffin of her career. I'd like you to come with me, Michelle said. Vivian blinked, certain she had misheard. I'm sorry? I'd like you to join me on the show, not to be humiliated or put on display, but to have an honest conversation about what happened and why it matters. Michelle handed her the folder. These are some talking points the producers sent over. You don't have to follow them exactly, but they might help you prepare. Vivian stared at the folder in her hands, unable to process what was happening. You want me to go on national television? With you? After what I did? Especially after what you did, Michelle replied. Look, Ms. Porter, Vivian, please. Vivian, what happened yesterday was wrong, but the response to it, this pile-on, this rush to destroy your life and career, that's not right either. It doesn't create change. It just creates fear and resentment. But why would you want to help me? Vivian asked, genuinely bewildered. You don't even know me. Michelle's expression softened. I know what it's like to make mistakes and have them magnified for public consumption. And I know what it's like to be judged based on appearances. Maybe that's enough common ground to start with. Vivian looked down at the folder, then back, at Michelle's face. There was no mockery there, no hidden agenda she could detect. Just a genuine offer that seemed too good to be true. I don't deserve this chance, she said honestly. Maybe not, Michelle agreed. But I'm offering it anyway. The question is whether you're brave enough to take it. Put that way, how could she refuse? Vivian took a deep breath. What exactly would I need to do? Be honest. Don't make excuses. Talk about what you've learned. And listen when I talk about why experiences like mine matter. Michelle checked her watch. We need to leave in about 2 minutes if we're going to make it to the studio on time. What do you say? The old Vivian, the one who had climbed the fashion industry ladder by being calculating and careful, would have analyzed all the angles, weighed the professional risks against the potential benefits. But that Vivian had died yesterday when the video went viral. This new Vivian, raw and humbled, simply nodded. Yes, I'll do it. Michelle smiled, a real smile this time that lit up her whole face. Good. And fair warning, I haven't told the producers. You're coming. Their faces should be quite interesting when we walk in together. As they rose to leave, Vivian felt a curious lightness. Her career might still be over. Elysium might still fire her. The social media outrage might continue unabated. But for the first time since the disastrous encounter, she felt something like hope. Not hope that she would escape consequences. She had been wrong, and there should be consequences for that. But hope that something meaningful might emerge from her mistake, that she might learn and grow and become someone better than the person who had judged a woman by her clothing. Ready? Michelle asked, hand on the doorknob. Vivian straightened her shoulders and nodded. Ready? The morning hour studio buzzed with the controlled chaos typical of live television. Production assistants darted between camera setups, makeup, artists made last-minute touch-ups, and the hosts reviewed their notes for the upcoming segment. In a small green room, Vivian sat perfectly still as a stylist applied powder to her forehead. Nervous? Michelle asked from the chair beside her, looking completely at ease in the pre-show commotion. Terrified, Vivian admitted. I've never been on television before. Just remember to breathe, Michelle advised, and speak from the heart. That's what people connect with. Authenticity. Authenticity. The word struck Vivian as ironic. For years she had worked in an industry built on carefully constructed images and appearances. She had become so skilled at projecting the right impression that she'd nearly forgotten what it felt like to simply be herself. A young producer with a clipboard appeared at the door. "Mrs. Obama, we're ready for you. The hosts are very excited. About—" She stopped mid-sentence, noticing Vivian. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had company." "This is Vivian Porter," Michelle said calmly. "She'll be joining me for the interview." The producer's eyes widened in recognition. "The woman from the boutique, but the segment is about—" She stopped herself again, clearly flustered. "I know what the segment is about," Michelle replied with a smile that somehow managed to be both warm and firm. "Vivian and I have decided to address it together. Will that be a problem?" "No. No, of course not," the producer said quickly. I need to inform the hosts, and maybe adjust some questions." She hurried away, already speaking rapidly into her headset. Vivian felt a fresh wave of anxiety. "They're going to hate me." "The producers?" Michelle asked. "Everyone. The hosts, the audience, the entire country probably." Michelle considered this. "Some might," she acknowledged. "But you'd be surprised how people respond to honesty and growth. Remember, most people have made mistakes they regret. Most people know what it's like to wish for a second chance." Before Vivian could respond, the producer returned. "We're ready for both of you. Mrs. Obama, you'll be introduced first, and then we'll bring Ms. Porter out after the initial questions." As they followed the producer toward the studio, Vivian's phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Where are you? Are you watching Morning Hour? Michelle Obama is about to be interviewed about Elysium." She tucked the phone away without responding. He would find out soon enough. The studio lights were blindingly bright as Michelle was led onto the set. The audience erupted in applause and cheers, their admiration for the former First Lady evident. From the wings, Vivian watched as Michelle greeted the two hosts, Heather and Tom, with warm hugs. "It's always such a pleasure to have you with us," Heather gushed as they settled into their seats. "Thank you for having me," Michelle replied. "I always enjoy our conversations." "Well, today's topic is a bit different," Tom said, his expression growing serious. "I'm sure most of our viewers have seen the video of your encounter at Elysium Boutique yesterday. It sparked quite a conversation about exclusivity and prejudice in retail spaces." Michelle nodded. "It has, and these are important conversations to have. But before we go further, I've brought someone with me who I think should be part of this discussion." The hosts exchanged surprised glances. "I've invited Vivian Porter to join us," Michelle continued. "For those who might not know, Vivian is the boutique manager from the video." A murmur rippled through the audience. The producer gave Vivian a gentle nudge, and suddenly she was walking onto the set, into the bright lights and the buzz of shocked whispers. Michelle stood to greet her, taking her hand reassuringly as Vivian took the empty chair beside her. The audience's reaction was a mix of confused applause and uncertain silence. "Well, this is unexpected," Tom said, recovering quickly. "Ms. Porter, thank you for joining us." Vivian nodded, not trusting her voice just yet. "I have to ask," Heather said, leaning forward. "How did this come about? The two of you appearing together?" "I reached out to Vivian this morning," Michelle explained. "I felt it was important for us to address what happened directly, together, rather than letting it become just another viral moment that divides people." "Ms. Porter," Tom said, turning to Vivian, "the video of your interaction with Mrs. Obama has been viewed millions of times. People are calling it everything from poor customer service to outright discrimination. What do you have to say about your actions?" This was it. The moment of truth. Vivian took a deep breath, remembering Michelle's advice. "Speak from the heart." "What I did was wrong," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "I made assumptions based on appearances. I treated Mrs. Obama dismissively because she wasn't dressed like someone I thought belonged in a luxury boutique. There's no excuse for that kind of behavior, and I'm deeply sorry for it." "But you didn't know it was Michelle Obama," Heather pointed out. "That's exactly the point," Vivian replied. "It shouldn't matter who she was. Every person who walks into that store, or any store, deserves to be treated with respect. The fact that I didn't recognize her doesn't excuse my behavior. It highlights the problem." I judged someone based solely on how they looked, and I was completely wrong. The audience was silent now, listening intently. Mrs. Obama, Tom said, many people would have used this incident to call for Ms. Porter's firing or to publicly shame her. Instead, you've brought her here. Why? Michelle smiled. Because public shaming rarely leads to real change. It might make people afraid to make mistakes, but it doesn't address the underlying issues or create space for growth. And what are those underlying issues in your view? Heather asked. We live in a society that constantly tells us to judge people by their appearance, Michelle said. The clothes they wear, the car they drive, the neighborhood they live in. The fashion industry, and I say this as someone who loves fashion, is particularly focused on these external markers of worth and belonging. She glanced at Vivian. But I think Vivian has something important to say about that. All eyes turned to Vivian. She hadn't prepared for this opening, but suddenly she knew exactly what she needed to say. I've spent my entire career in an industry that sells exclusivity, she began. We don't just sell clothes or accessories. We sell the idea that owning certain things makes you special, makes you belong to an elite group. And part of creating that feeling of exclusivity is keeping other people out. She paused, surprised by her own words. Yesterday I was doing what I'd been trained to do, protecting that boundary between who belongs and who doesn't. But when I saw the video of myself, I didn't recognize the person I've become, and I didn't like her very much. A few audience members nodded in understanding. What happens now? Tom asked. For both of you. For me, Vivian said, I've already lost my position at Elysium, which is a consequence I accept. But more importantly, I'm committed to learning from this experience and finding ways to create positive change in an industry I still care about, despite its flaws. Actually, Michelle interjected, that's something I wanted to discuss today. Vivian and I have been talking about creating a program that addresses issues of inclusivity in luxury retail spaces. This was news to Vivian, who turned to Michelle in surprise. The fashion industry has enormous cultural influence, Michelle continued. What if we could harness that influence to break down barriers instead of creating them? What if luxury brands became leaders in inclusivity rather than exclusivity? You're proposing to work together? Heather asked, clearly surprised. We're exploring the possibility, Michelle confirmed. Sometimes the most powerful partnerships come from unexpected places. The interview continued for another 15 minutes, with questions from both the hosts and the audience. By the end, the initial shock of seeing Vivian and Michelle together had transformed into something else, a genuine interest in their unexpected alliance and the changes they hoped to create. As they left the studio afterward, Vivian's phone was flooded with messages. Richard had called 7 times. Trey had sent a string of exclamation points followed by, "You're on TV with Michelle Obama?" Even her mother had texted, "So proud of you for owning your mistake, honey." But the message that caught her eye was from a number she didn't recognize. Interested in discussing your ideas about inclusivity in luxury retail? Call me. Valentina Chen. Everything okay? Michelle asked as they waited for their cars. Vivian showed her the text. I think so. Actually, I think things might be better than okay. Michelle smiled. Sometimes our worst moments can lead to our greatest opportunities for growth. The key is being willing to learn from them. Thank you, Vivian said simply. For giving me that chance. Thank yourself, Michelle replied. You had the courage to take it. 6 months later, Vivian stood at a podium in the ballroom of the Harrington Hotel, addressing an audience of fashion industry leaders, retail executives, and design students. Behind her, a screen displayed the logo for the Inclusion in Fashion Initiative, a new nonprofit dedicated to breaking down barriers in luxury retail. When I made the mistake of judging someone based on their appearance, I never imagined it would lead me here, she told the crowd. But sometimes our failures can be the foundation for something meaningful, if we're willing to learn and change. She gestured to the side of the stage where Michelle Obama waited to join her. With the guidance of our founding advisor and the support of our partner brands, we've created training programs for retail staff, mentorships for designers from underrepresented backgrounds, and a certification program for stores committed to inclusive practices. The audience applauded as Michelle joined her at the podium. Vivian and I come from different worlds, Michelle said, but we share a belief that fashion should be about expression and joy, not exclusion and judgment. What began as an uncomfortable moment in a boutique has evolved into something neither of us expected, a movement to transform how the industry thinks about belonging. Later at the reception, Vivian chatted with a young design student who had approached her shyly. I was afraid to pursue fashion because I never felt like I belonged in that world, the student admitted. But hearing your story makes me think maybe there's room for someone like me after all. Vivian smiled, thinking of how far she had come from that moment of judgment in Elysium. There's room for all of us, she said. We just have to be brave enough to open the door.